Hey everybody, I'm Nina Soden, urban fantasy author of the Blood Angel series and the Sector C series, and today I have Danielle Orsino with me. Destined to be a writer from a young age, Danielle was working as a nurse and treating a patient who needed some distraction during the IV treatment sessions. So she started telling her a story. Little did she know that that story would turn into an amazing book series. She is embarking on her biggest challenge ever to bring one little story into the fantasy world. Birth of the Fae, Locked Out of Heaven is the result. Expanding her love of writing, comics, and exploring the world of fantasy novels, she delves into the realm of fairies and retells their origins from a completely new perspective. Okay, so I love fairies. I love the Fae. I love that realm, that world, that fantasy. I love bringing things that are made up, maybe, who knows what we can really believe or not into this world. So tell me how your fairy tale or your fantasy or your Fae world is a completely new perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, Nina, thank you. I
Yes.
really appreciate this. I guess what I did was I took it from, everybody kind of knows Fae and fairies more from a Celtic perspective. That's a lot of times where it kind of comes from first, the little people, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just went and was like, I'm going to take it and turn it on its head. And I took it more from the angels and a little bit of Christian mythology, a little bit of that Catholic Christianity hierarchy. Okay. And decided, well, what would happen if we put that spin on it? And then I took that and thought of polytheism, Egyptian gods and goddesses. I love Greek mythology and thought, well, our ancestors must have thought in some realm that obviously they existed. So what if it was, in fact, that they didn't have video cameras? How do we know?
Yep.
So I thought, okay, there must have been something there. So I thought, well, maybe it is the Fae in some way. What if these were all one realm and one sense of one type of deities? So that's where the Fae came from. What if they were just the same energy, just retold over and over again? And that's kind of where it came from, was that these angels are locked out of heaven in a sense. They've been abandoned and they have to find a way to exist. So they reinvent themselves and become what we know as our polytheistic pantheon. Wow. And that's where we went with it. So it's a little different than what we normally know of the Fae.
It's completely different. And I love that. There are so many stories that are retold and retold and retold. And you see the same types of characters, the same types of worlds over and over again, that having something that sounds completely new is very exciting. So I'm excited to hear more about the book, and I'm sure my viewers are excited to hear about the book. But before we get into that, I want to let everybody know that you will have a chance to win a copy of this book. Beautiful hardcover copy of this book, autographed by the author herself. So if you can, please comment below, like this video, and subscribe to my channel. That is how you're going to get entered to win this book. And please, Danielle, if you could take a moment just to read the blurb or recite it for us, because you are the author, you probably know it by heart. Tell us what the blurb is on this book to entice us just a little bit more.
After the great war between God and Lucifer, you have the virtue angels, which are sent here on earth to get it ready for God's next little experiment, humanity. And they find themselves that one day they cannot return to the shining kingdom. So they have to find a way to reinvent themselves. But where you have these peace-loving virtue angels, you have the power brigade angels, which are the foot soldiers of God's army and the archangels. Both of them must survive without the shining kingdom. So they must reinvent themselves and learn to coexist with humanity and with each other. But where you have this, they have different philosophies on survival and humanity. The one thing they agree on is worship equals power. But how they go about doing this, two very, very different stories and different philosophies. So you just have to read and see what happens once they clash and meet. Now they aren't angels anymore, they're fae, and they're not bound by the rules of the angelic kingdom anymore.
So your story takes the fae all the way back to pre-humanity then.
Yes.
Where does your story begin? Where does the book begin? Where are we in our world?
If we go with linear time, the fae don't really think of time the way we think of time. So for them, it starts out where the earth is new. And it's more, I don't want to think of it as the Garden of Eden or anything like that. You know, if we're looking at it to benchmark it by time in that sense, there really isn't any. The way the book picks up is right after the war. So God and Lucifer have clashed. Lucifer has gone back to his domain of hell. And we start with right at that moment. The war is over. So everything is clear.
So are humans in existence?
Humans have not yet populated. Nope.
Okay.
The earth is clean.
Okay.
And it's perfect. You know, it's untouched. It's everything that you would expect peace to really be. It's just quiet here. And it's in that quiet storm, in a sense, that you can actually get a sense of the finality of what's happened. The smoke is cleared, and now everybody's kind of sitting back like, what just happened? Because to be honest, the virtues, they've just been tending their job. It's not that they didn't want to get involved, but that's just not their job. They're very much keeping their heads down and saying, we were sent here to do this, to get this planet ready.
Yeah. That's
all we do. The Power Brigade, their job is to fight. So they've done their job. Yeah. They're just like, okay, we did what we were supposed to do. Cool. Like, we're good. We won. I'm ready to go home.
Right.
But they're not called back. And you'll see as it goes, I do discuss what happened when the gates closed.
Okay.
And they're like, okay, we did it. Cool. Like, we're waiting for our reward. Here we go.
Yep. So how much research did you have to do with this story? I know it's fantasy, it's this made up world, but it sounds like you brought in a lot of religious aspects or mythological aspects. So how much research did you do in preparation for this?
I did research a lot because I wanted to, as much as it's fantasy, and as much as we talk about, you know, hey, it's fantasy, you know, what do you really have to do? I wanted it to capture as much realistic text as I could. Mm-hmm. So I did go in and look at, like, I found out there really were virtue angels. There really were virtue angels. Okay, when I say really were, you know, take it with a grain of salt here.
Yep.
You know, I don't want anybody coming down on me. But in the hierarchy of angels, there were virtue angels. Their job really was to nurture nature.
Okay.
So that I was kind of surprised at, but I did find out in certain sects of Catholicism and Christianity, they do acknowledge virtue angels. So I was like, okay, cool. Found that out. So I really looked into that aspect of it. And then the Power Brigade, obviously I made them up. You know, that part doesn't exist, but I looked into it as archangels wouldn't have done all of the heavy lifting. So I thought they would have had foot soldiers, or at least in my mind, any army has an infantry.
Yep.
That's how I looked at it. But I had taken the university I went to was a religious university. So I had to take theology, I had to take biblical studies, I did all that. So I went back and pulled from that a lot. And I did a lot of reading for everybody out there who, you know, swears I'm blasphemous. I actually did do the research. I was not looking to go in and offend anyone. It is a fantasy novel. I'm not saying that this is, you know, what happened.
Right.
So I did try to look at it, and I looked at other religions as well to try to get a feel for what what angels and what other religions have this angelic archetype.
Yep.
So I did, I did that type of research to kind of fill it in. Then I looked at paganism, a lot of paganism, to try to get a feel for that side, Greek mythology, Egyptian. I looked at all of it to try to bring it in. I guess you could say I was, I wanted, if I was going to offend, I was offending everybody at that point. I was, an equal opportunist.
There you go.
But, I wanted to get everything so I could really get a feel for how I was going to do this, and for, ongoing with the series. But there was an extensive amount of research, because when I originally told the story, it was all oral. I didn't sit down to write it.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was off the top of my head, and I was pulling from what I had learned.
So how long since you told that story to help your patient to the point where you decided, I think I'm going to make this into an actual book?
That was funny. I did not sit down to write this book. That was never my intention, ever. I never intended to write this into a book.
Okay.
I never thought. This was just purely done originally just to entertain my patient. That was it. When what happened was, I was on my way to PA school. I had it all set out. I was going to be a physician assistant. Got in. I was heading in that direction. And while I was treating this patient, I had a needle stick. And that's horrible. Technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. That happens. And what happened was, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
My phone just doesn't want to work today. Let's see, maybe that'll fix it. And if it doesn't, then we'll have to switch. What happened was, I had a needle stick, and then I was treated with the same drug that I had been treating everybody else with.
Okay.
And went into anaphylactic shock. And I had been having hives while I was treating the patients, and mixing with this med. I had breathing issues. I had some problems, but we always chalked it up to the fact that I had a latex allergy, and I was working in a basement. So there was a million other reasons why this could possibly be happening.
You didn't realize it was the drug itself?
No. Was tested. They didn't think I was going to make it at one point. The anaphylaxis was so bad. I was closing up, thought they were going to intubate me. Everything was going wrong. Saw an allergist, and he said, "You are so allergic to this drug." He's like, "I've never seen anybody so allergic." He then tested me. He said, "You're not allergic just to this drug. You're allergic to the entire class of cephalosporins." He said, "Like, you're a girl with a peanut allergy working in a peanut butter factory."
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I'm on my way to PA school. Like, I got in. And he's like, yeah, I don't see how that's possible. I reported it to the school. They came back and said, "We can't take you because it's a risk." He said, and I said, "Yeah, but I'm not going to be mixing drugs." Like, I gave him all this. And they said, "It's just, you can't even treat people. You can't be in the room." So I had to forfeit. Now, I had worked years to get in, this is my plan.
Yeah.
My patient finished treatment at the same time. And he said, "You have to go write this book." He's like, "If you don't see that the universe is pointing you," he's like, "I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah.
The funny thing is, he was my first needle stick. The day I started working, he started dripping. Our paths just mimicked each other. And he was the one who said, "You have to go write this book now."
It was kismet. It was fate.
Yeah. And so I then was like, okay, I'll go give it a shot. So it was probably from the time I told him the story, or started telling him, it was maybe a couple months, and I sat down and wrote the book. It was probably from the time then I sat and wrote it, it was 9 months, and books 1, 2, and 3 popped out, the first drafts.
Wow. Okay. That is really fast.
I thought everybody did this, but I also hopped around. I didn't know, like, I'm not classically trained. So I'd start with like chapter 5 of book 1. Then I'd be like, well, originally this was book, this was a different book. And then I was like, well, they'll probably want to know where the Fae came from. So let me start with this. I jumped around so much that, but the first 3 books and their first drafts popped out. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? Like I had the books. I'm like, I don't know what to do with these.
So
it kind of went from there.
Are you an indie author or are you traditionally published?
I'm traditionally published with Icon.
Okay.
But they didn't originally take fiction. They only did nonfiction. So a friend of mine owns Icon. She was like, look, I only do self-help metaphysical stuff. She's like, I don't do this.
Yeah.
And at that point I had an offer from one of the big 3, from one of their metaphysical imprints.
Okay.
And they told me this book is way too long. I mean, it was like Game of Thrones style. Book 1 was huge. Okay. And they said, you got to cut this baby in half, come back to us in a year and we'll take it. So I had told her this and she said, you know what? She goes, they're going to own you for 20 years. This is how it's going to go. She goes, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. I'll take it. And she said, I will make a new imprint for fiction. You'll be my first one. She goes, it's going to be a lot of trial and error because I've never done fiction. So let's be clear. She's like, and let's give this a shot. She said, but you got to do the cover. I've gotten it. She's like, I'll approve it, but this one's on you to do. She's like, I can't really offer you too much publicity, nothing, because we just don't do this. And I was like, okay, I figured, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so, yeah, I did it. I mean, thank God for Icon because they've been great. They did it through and they named their fiction imprint Fae and Logic out of, flipping the coin on me, betting on red.
Yeah.
And we did it that way. But, I had a lot of big missteps in between all that. It was not smooth sailing. Any author out there who is listening and watching, trust me, I had every misstep. I got every scam known to mankind. I got every copyright scan. I mean, every copy edit scam, I met them. The ones that are like, your book is good, but for $100,000, we'll make it better. Yeah. I heard that scam.
Oh yeah. We all get that. The emails, the phone calls. Yeah.
Got that scam. I got the editor who you tried working with in the same thing, oh, I'm just going to redline. And then you get the bill for $9,000 later and you're going, we only had phone calls. I haven't even seen anything. Oh, we were talking through your book. What?
Oh,
yeah, I got that one. Yeah, love that one. That one's a real good one. Then but for $20,000 more, we can make your writing better, but I don't want you to write my book. Oh, you don't want a ghostwriter? No, I want to write the book. I'm writing the book. I don't need you. What is this? I got the one, this one was the best one. 4 months before it was coming out, I was supposed to go through airport. They have the ones that just do airport distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sent them like 6 months, maybe 8 months before then. I had sent it, saying, here's everything. Oh, we're just going to do airport distribution. They sent me a full editorial breakdown of what they didn't like about the book, destroyed the book. I mean, destroyed it. And then they said, but for $36,000, we could make your book a hit.
$36,000.
They could make it a hit. And I said, you were just supposed to do airport distribution. That's all I wanted from you. I don't need this editorial BS. I mean, pan the book from here to Kingdom Come. Panned it. Like, some of the stuff didn't even make sense, which let me know they didn't even read the book. But when broke my soul down, like I was hysterically crying. It was so bad. And I'm like, they made me seem like basically the book should never see the light of day. Wow. And I was like, wow. I had a very big publicity firm I did hire, one of the best in the biz. And they released the ending to my book on Goodreads.
No.
3 months before it came out, and put themselves as a librarian, so I couldn't get it down. That was so much fun to deal with. So this is what I'm telling you. Every author who's listening to this, I've been where you are, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It's never as glamorous, and everybody who's watching and listening, it never goes the way you think it's going for an author. Believe me, it's not. So when people are like, oh, you're an author, it's like the work that goes into it. And we wound up dropping them, obviously.
Yeah.
And everything was, this has never happened before. I don't know. And then we find out there was another Fae author on their roster who was threatened by the book. So I've seen it all. I've seen it all in such a short time that I have to laugh, because what else do you do? There's, they gave my first review they gave to a romance blogger. Why you would give my book to a romance blogger? No idea. She panned it. So, when people say stuff like, well, how do you deal with criticism? When you're brand new to this and you are not a classically trained author, you are literally standing naked in Times Square going, rate my body, please.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
Absolutely, it does. And I don't know that ever really gets easier.
No.
I think most authors come to the knowledge that, hey, you don't read reviews because you're never going to please everybody.
No.
And in terms of the criticism, as long as it's constructive, great. If it's just bashing or, for a lack of a better word, just degrading it and ripping it apart, then it doesn't really matter. If it's constructive criticism, I think, what you get from editors and stuff, I think that is invaluable.
Oh, yes. 100%.
That's constructive criticism. That is seriously somebody wanting to help you make your book and your writing and your story 1,000 times better. And I think that every book can be improved.
Oh, I think my editor, Cleet, had told me when we were talking, he said, how do you feel about this? And I said, I hate it. Like, I will tell people are like, do you love your book? And I'm like, I loved it 2 years ago. Do I love it today? No, I find, and he's like, that's the hardest thing. He said, because that's where you are. You loved it 2 years ago because that's where you were. He's like, but that means you've evolved as a writer.
Yeah.
He said, and that's the best thing. He's like, that's actually not a bad answer. He said, but you have to understand that's where you were 2 years ago. You're evolving. He's like, I cringe at what I wrote when I first started. Yeah. And he's like, every writer goes through that. He's like, but that's good. That's growth. He's like, you should. And he told me, he said, for as great of a tool as Goodreads is, he's like, you should never go on it. Ever. He's like, you got to get somebody to do it. He's like, because it's not good for you. I found that my best way to handle it is I negate the best and I take out the worst.
Yeah.
Then everything's in the middle. My personal thing is, because the book tackles religious themes.
Yeah.
I found that I know off the bat if somebody didn't give the book a chance, because I'll always see the religious stuff didn't bother me, but the minute I see that, throw it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw it out, because we're not getting anywhere with that. I just know. So, but it's new. Like I said, this was not the field I started. I wanted, I didn't set out to go, I'm going to be a writer.
Yeah. So,
it's a little difficult, but I find it to be so rewarding at the same time that I can't see doing anything else. I'm thrilled for, book 2 comes out of copy edit this week. I'm thrilled for it. I love where my Fae are going. I love my Fae. They're part of my world.
Yeah.
Now I look around and my dragons, my dragons are my dogs. I look at my dogs and, there's Los. Okay. They're all here. Jarvok, they're everybody's here.
So when did book 1 get released?
Book 1 was released on June 29th, 2020.
And when did you start that story?
September. I finished it September 9th, 2000. Officially, it was the first draft was finished September 9th, 2018. The first draft was done.
Okay. So it took some time getting from first draft to actually publication. Yes. Let's talk about that just a little bit. What was that process like for you once you finished that first draft and you said, now what am I going to do with this? I know you talked to your friend, you decided to do traditional publishing, you went with her company, but what did your editing process look like? I know for me, I go through numerous beta readers, I go through professional editors, then I go back through beta readers. What did that process look like for you working with a publishing house?
Originally, I had made the decision at that point to go with Icon. I did have an agent. I found her in June before I officially finished it. I had found her in June. She read the first 2 chapters and signed me. Okay. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know.
And is that local there in New York with you?
No, she was actually in Atlanta initially. Okay. And so, I was like, all right, I guess this is when I wasn't familiar with the process, anything. I had gone through, at that point, I found one editor that I was working with. And I didn't know much about the editing process. I also I always handwrite my first drafts.
I know a few writers that do that. I absolutely cannot handwrite my novels.
I handwrite because that's my first editing. Because then when I sit down to type it, that's where I go through the first edit.
Yeah.
So I handwrote everything, then I typed it out. And yes, my hands hurt typing. I mean, I would dread sitting there typing and being like, just one more line. Couldn't get it through. But I did that. We went through, I had worked with one editor. And then after I did that, my agent had said, we have interest from this major publisher. But like I said, the book was ginormous. Book 1 and 2 were one book at that point.
Okay.
It was a monster. And so, and I had thought of where the book wound up being cut was where I had originally thought maybe I should cut it. I wasn't sure. And then they had said, come back to us in a year. And that's where I had originally thought, that's when I started speaking with my friend at Icon. But I then hooked up with my current editor, Cleet. And I had found him through a service, and we were just simpatico from the minute we spoke. He just got it, and he was like, you know what? Send me the first 2 chapters. Let me take a look. And then I told him, I said, I'm either thinking of cutting the book in half or doing a novella, kind of like The Green Mile. Mm-hmm. That's where I was kind of torn. And so he said, let me take a look and I'll get back to you. And so he said, cut it right where you're thinking of cutting it. He's like, he sent me this letter, this beautiful editorial letter. Here was my review. We spoke on the phone, and it was he just got where I was going with it. It was like real easy breezy.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, I called my friend JR at Icon, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go with you. I said, I know if I wait a year, I can go with these guys and they're bigger. But I like where you want to go with it. I like having control of the cover, everything that she wanted. And I said, and I had this idea to do this theatrical trailer. She's like, look, I'm not paying for a theatrical trailer, but if you want to do it, she's like, I'm not going to hold you back.
Right.
Like, okay, cool. She knew all the work I was putting into the dragons. So I just sat with Cleet, banged it out. And he was just so available. We got on the phone. He said, here are a couple little things I want you to look at. And, we just went. I had a couple beta readers that I tested out with. And they came back to me with their feelings. We went back and forth. But I was a little nervous to put it out to too many beta readers because I didn't know how to take it all in. I didn't want to start changing too much.
Yeah.
To please people. I didn't really know how to handle that. So I kind of kept it a little low key.
Okay.
And the way I wrote, I tended to write each chapter. I don't know if you remember the show or if the viewers remember the show Heroes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I loved the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
After that, it got a little wonky. But the first 2 seasons, every time an episode ended, it tied up one little thing, but it always ended. You would go, what the hell's going on this show? Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
That's how I wanted the chapters to end. I wanted every chapter to end with somebody going, okay, she figured that out, but what the hell? That's how I wanted to do it. Now, if that's the right way to write, correct way, I don't know.
I don't think there is any correct or wrong way. So it's just what works for you, what style of writing works for you, what style of books you want to read. So I think that's fantastic. I'm a huge cliffhanger person. I love a cliffhanger.
Yes.
I get so many, there are so many people that just hate a cliffhanger. How did you leave it like that?
I love it. You see, I'm the same way. I like cliffhangers because it makes you want to go to the next piece.
Well, and my first series, I left the series on a cliffhanger.
That's awesome. You see, I love that. I'm about that. I'm a comic book girl, so I appreciate that.
Well, and that's where my next question was going to go. You brought up heroes. I know that you're into cosplay. I know that you're into comics. How did that world affect the world of your Fae? How did the comics come into play in your writing style?
I can say that when I look at my Fae and I line them up, I can pick out which villain, which hero, anti-hero influenced who. Like, I've made the connection to Jarvok and Magneto a lot.
Okay.
I see a lot of Magneto and Jarvok. It's just a decision here or an event here could have changed their path very easily.
Yeah.
They don't look at themselves and say, I'm a villain. They look at themselves as, I'm trying to do what's right for my kin. Love me or hate me, I don't really care.
Yeah.
But I'm doing what's right for my people. Get out of my way or get on board. Pick one. Yeah. To me, that's very Magneto-like.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Jarvok to me is Magneto in a way. So I could see, that's an influence. I look at Serena, and Serena to me, there's a little Harley in her, in the sense that there's no filter and she's loyal. Harley Quinn she's a ride or die girl. Love or hate her, doesn't matter what side of the law she's on. She's gonna stick by your side. That to me is Serena.
Okay.
Wonder Woman is my all-time. I got a Wonder Woman tattoo. I love Wonder Woman. Do I think there's a little Wonder Woman in Aurora? Aurora may not be a warrior, but she's got that idea of I will choose love at times over it. Now, toward the end, do you see a little Wonder Woman in her? Yeah, you do. In the book, like, she kind of comes into her own just a bit. So, my characters always have that. There's always a comic influence in some way. I get asked the question a lot, what writers do you love? I'll always say I love my Shannon Mayers. I love my, Kim Harrison's, Laurel K. Hamilton, Anne Rice, of course. But comic books are really where I draw from, because those characters have been with me so long.
Yeah. And
their writing style, I can go back to Wonder Woman, from George Perez up to, Gal Simone. They've been so long that those characters inside and out. I think that's why I love writing a series, because it fits more.
Well, and it lasts, and you can hang on to them for longer. You find out more about your characters when it's a series. I'm a series writer as well, and I've interviewed other authors that are just standalone book authors that have a hard time understanding how series writers write, because it's so long. And I think that's the reason I love a series, is because it's so long. You get to know them so well, better than you ever thought you would get to know the characters. And I think that's fascinating. When you say that you can see those comic book characters in each of your characters, is that something that you initially think, okay, I want this type of character. I want somebody like a Harley Quinn. I want somebody like a Wonder Woman. I want somebody like a Magneto or a Captain America. I want different characters with these qualities, and then create your story? Or does that just come naturally because of your background and your love of comics? Do you think that you start writing and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've kind of created this type of character?
I don't go in consciously doing it. I think it just comes out, to be honest. It's not something that I set out to do and be like, I'm going to create Harley, because I don't think you can capture it consciously. I think it comes out as inauthentic. It's just one of those things where it's just in my DNA at this point. That their influence is just there, and then it comes out. I know when I was writing book 4, there is so much comic influence that they just came out to the point where I was quoting comic, at one point, because book 4 takes place in the 21st century and we do such a big time jump, I wound up writing maximum effort as one of them is fighting. And I went, oh God, I'm quoting Deadpool now. Like it just comes out.
Yeah.
And there's so much comic book Easter eggs in book 4 because one of the characters is a comic book geek. It was so natural.
Yeah.
But I don't set out to do it. It just flows or it doesn't.
Because it's so much a part of Danielle that it
Mhm.
becomes a part of the characters.
Yeah, it's either there or it's not.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Now you have just the one book is published, correct?
Yep. Just Locked Out of Heaven is the first one. And then book 2 comes out of copy edit this week, early next week. And then we'll be launching book 2 next year.
Okay. Early next year, mid next year. When do your readers
we're thinking,
expect it?
Icon is telling me possibly fall. I'm waiting for them to give me the official publication date.
And then where are you in the process for book 3 and book 4?
Book 3 came out of developmental edit and it will be going into copy edit as soon as I make changes. And book 4, 5 goes into developmental edit this month.
Okay. Wow.
So they're all flowing. It's really kind of nice to see.
Yeah.
Because they're mine. It's, you must get this when you finish it and you're like, this is where they are in their journey.
Yeah.
It's nice to see them because you're like, here they are in book 1 and now I'm writing book 4, 5.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is where you guys started to, this is where you are now. It's exciting to see where they're going to be. And it's my first experience with having readers that are like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens with Desdemona. And I'm kind of excited to see, where Jarbok's going to go. Is he redeemable? Is he not? And I know where he's at. So
Right.
It's exciting.
Right. No, that's absolutely exciting. I was talking with another author the other day about that feeling you get when you first open the box, when your books arrive.
Yeah.
So what did you do the day book 1 came in the mail and you got to hold it for the very first time? What did you do to celebrate?
To be honest, I looked at it and I just stared for a second. I took a picture. And then I took a picture of the dedication where it says to my father, and I sent it to him. And then I took a picture and I sent it to my patient who has become one of my best friends, sent it to him. And then my dad called me immediately and he was like, take a video of you flipping through it so I can see that it's real.
Aww.
I did that. And to be honest, I just sat there with my husband like, this is really happening. Yeah. It was a little bit of a surreal moment. And I took a picture with my puppies with it because without them, I don't have Los the Dragon. I don't have Lady Penelope. So I had to kind of take a picture with them. And I really just sat there kind of just being grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because it's weird when your life just takes that left and that's where you end up. Yeah. That it was like, oh, this is where I'm at with it. It was just such a surreal moment that you're holding something and there's your name on it.
Yeah. No,
it really was like, and we were dead in the middle of the COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
In New York. So I was kind of holding it like, there was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do. I was just holding it like, okay. And I think I did call my boxing coach and I said, I have one of the books. And he was like, okay, because our gym everything was closed down, but I had a key to get in because I teach there. And he's like, next time you go in, just leave it for me so I can take a look at it. And so it was, that kind of thing. And then my cousins all were like, oh, Dee, you finally made it. Like you finally wrote a book and you listened to all the voices in your head. I got like a bunch of texts like that. Like that finally paid off. But it was, it was just kind of cool because you did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for all the talk, you made
finally
it.
Came to fruition. It's finally there, physical, and you can hold it. It's an amazing feeling.
It truly is.
Yeah.
It really is.
So is there anything else you would like my viewers to know about either you as a person or your writing style or your books in general?
I think the biggest misconception, I think, is one of the things I'm trying to clear up about the books, is that there is no Christian agenda pushed with the book. It is a fantasy book.
Yeah.
First and foremost. Because unfortunately, like I said, I've made the blasphemy list this week. So I feel like
Nice.
I finally made it now.
Yeah.
I I feel like it's a thumbs up. I'm not looking to offend anybody. The book is a fantasy book, but I understand where some people might feel a certain way in the first chapter because of my main female protagonist's attitude toward her creator after being locked out of heaven. But due to the title, I think some people think I'm pushing a certain message. I'm not. It's just, I just wanted to take a different spin on things. But we've had situations in book tours where people sign up for it because they think there's going to be a Christian agenda. And then they don't get past the first chapter. And so they actually will back out of the tour because of it. And then they say, I can't do this. It goes against my beliefs. Or they pan the book because they can't get past the first chapter and destroy me. And I'm like, at the end of the day, this is just a fantasy book.
Yeah.
It's not an exposition on Christianity or on religion. There are actually some strong messages about friendship and the fact that you are building a family, even if you're not blood related. You're building a family, you're building a community.
Yeah.
You can, when something bad happens, you can rebuild yourself and come back from something.
Yep.
So I think sometimes the book tends to get a bad rap because everybody's caught up in the religious syntax instead of saying, oh, there's actually a cool message that, just because you witnessed something, it doesn't mean that, the other person who's witnessing it, they don't have another story, or you can't see from their angle, their side.
Right.
So I think you can't always go by this conservative religious point of view. And like I said, I'm not pushing anything political. It's nothing like that. So I think that would be something that I'm trying to clear up. And I was aware believe me, I understood when I wrote it.
That some people would take offense.
I got it. I totally got it. My father is very religious, so he was the first person I checked with.
And did he like the book?
Yeah, he was the first. I asked him, when I told him this is the story, I braced and I was like, here we go. And I sat there going, all right, I'm ready. And he looked at me, he went, is that it? And I went, yeah. And I was like, here we go. And he went, what's the big deal?
Okay.
And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I was like, aren't you gonna, this is where you yell? And he's like, that's it. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I got no problem with it.
That's awesome.
I'm like, okay. And we talked about it because I was very concerned about his point of view.
Yeah.
But he had no issues with it. So the book, I'm not looking to offend anybody. I literally sat across from somebody who was looking to do a musical soundtrack for the book. And when I discussed it with them, they told me I was inviting demons. I mean, they went off on me. The venom that came from them. And I finally looked at them and I said, do you think Jesus is going to look at you and say, that's it, you tell her? I was like, what happened to turn the other cheek? And, and we got into a whole religious debate. And when I quoted some biblical stuff back, they looked at me and I went, oh yeah, I read the Bible too. I was like, I'm confirmed. I can walk into church. I was like, the holy water doesn't bubble when I get in there.
Yeah.
And I said, technically, if I've got you to debate and speak about it, aren't I doing the right thing? Now, he got up and left the table because he had no comeback.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is get somebody to pick it up, look at it, and if they lose their problems for 5 minutes and get lost in the world of the Fae and leaves thinking, wow, I have a friend like Serena. I'm kind of grateful to her or him. And go back and think, that's pretty cool, and say to them, you know what, you're a good person. Then I guess I've done my job.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I love that.
That's really That's it. The only other question I've gotten is, what is the sexuality of the Fae? I've gotten that a lot. So
Okay.
I will say to everyone, because for some reason it's come up, especially after the Zion Desdemona, the Fae are fluid. They do not fall in love with gender. It's about the energy. They don't care what package it comes in. They're only in love with the energy exchange. So they don't care male, female energy. It doesn't matter. They fall in love with they don't fall in love with the package. It's the energy.
That's actually very beautiful.
It can be anything. They're all about the energy they recognize. Mm-hmm. That's what they fall in love with. So those are the things that I get DM'd a lot. And yes, I will have some romance in book 2. I didn't have any romance in book 1. There will be romance coming in book 2. It's not a lot of romance, so I'm not Sarah J. Maas. I'm not Cassandra Clare. We'll have a little bit of romance in book 2. A little bit.
Okay. So. All right. I end all of my interviews in honor of James Lipton with his Inside the Actor Studio questionnaire. So it's 10 questions. There are no wrong answers, no explanations, just answer the question short and sweet. Okay?
Awesome. I'll get ready for it.
What is your favorite word?
Probably it's an expletive. Is that okay?
Yep.
Fuck.
What is your least favorite word?
The C word. See you next Tuesday.
Uh-huh. Yep. What turns you on?
A good martial art form.
What turns you off?
Hate.
What sound or noise do you love?
My dog's barking.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Sirens.
Okay. You've kind of already answered this, but I'll let you say it again. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Yep. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would still like to be a physician's assistant.
What profession would you not want to try?
Oh, I would never want to be an OBGYN.
Yeah. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
The invisible jet is gassed up and waiting for you, and your costume's to the left. Go have fun, Wonder Woman.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, that is the end of today's interview. Thank you so much for taking time to come and chat with me and do this. I had a great time, talking with you and hearing all about your process and your book. Thank you. For those of you who would like a chance to win an autographed copy, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment below. You have to comment below, otherwise we will not be able to contact you to let you know you won. Make sure you comment below. All right, everybody, that is the end of the interview. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.